first of all, thanks very much for being invited here. This paper is obviously joint with Hamish Lowe, Luigi Pistaferri, and Alessandra A.Voena. Let me just tell you, this paper started with an initial basic question, which was how do time limits in social insurance programs affect outcomes for women, particularly labor supply, actually labor supply and welfare participation. And the reason we thought we'd do a dynamic model at that point is because obviously what the time limits do, they kind of force the person to think about the timing of welfare and how long they're going to be on it. It kind of changes the incentives. So as we were setting up a relatively simple model to do that, it became obvious to us that but at the same time it might change marital behavior, because if you do or don't have time limits on welfare, you might want to delay marriage, for example, in one of the cases. So you take up social welfare, then you get married, and of course it can also affect divorce. But then it might also affect who you want to marry, right? Because suddenly, if a rich guy comes along, and you say, well, if I marry this guy, I will not be eligible for welfare anymore. But whether I really want to, and on aggregate, the household might be well off. But whether I really want to do that or not will depend on how if you like, the sharing is going to take place. So what started with a very simple question evolved into a more complex model of choice of marital status, of divorce, and the life cycle optimization with labor supply and welfare benefits. Now, we all know that welfare programs are designed to alleviate poverty and provide insurance. And of course, they can affect many dimensions of behavior, as I've been saying in a different way. So, what we want to do really is want to focus on policy and on kind of designing, ask the question of how welfare programs are designed, and ultimately even normative questions on how better to design them. Okay. So the background to this is the 1996 welfare reform in the U.S. And a key element of this reform was that it introduced the time-limited benefits over the life cycle. And so we went from the aid for families with dependent children to TANF. Okay, and we want to ask, how did this reform affect individuals? And we would like to ask that both in terms of short-run effects, but also in terms of long-run outcomes. So we want to ask, how did it affect labor supply? How did it affect marriage and divorce? How did it change allocation of resources to women?
Costas, at the same time, we had a change, quite a strong change in the IPC, and how would that sort of be embedded into labor supply policies?
Absolutely. So, first of all, let me just say that today you're just seeing a very preliminary paper that is basically, I don't have any real results. I've got some results. But the design of the paper is to include properly the budget constraint of both the ITC and taxes, indeed, and to actually look at the interaction of these effects. And indeed, the aim is to use the impacts that we observe. This ugly word has not been heard yet in this what seems to be a macro conference. We're going to use difference in differences, right, to kind of describe the effects around the reforms, and we're going to use that as a moment to actually pin down the model. So the interaction of TANF with the EIT is actually going to be extremely important, right? Because it can magnify the effects. Because while you, at the same time, you're increasing the incentive to work, and you're penalizing more welfare. So we're going to have a model of family formation and dissolution, and why we care about these things is because all these things can affect child development, they can affect female labor supply, and they can affect female and male well-being. And welfare programs and the way they're structured can distort these decisions with important welfare implications. Okay, so as I said already, we're going to use difference to difference analysis. We're going to show you that the effects on many dimensions of the reform are actually there in the data, and we're going to, in other words, we're going to use that to motivate setting up all this machinery, and then we're going to estimate a structural model that will allow explicit analysis of within household allocations, welfare, and be able to address redesign of welfare systems. So our model is going to have the following features. It's going to have endogenous family formation and dissolution. So people will be able to decide whether they get married or whether they continue with a marriage or not. It's going to be a limited commitment collective model. In other words, if you like, given a set of Pareto weights, there's going to be efficient allocation of resources, but these Pareto weights are going to evolve, if you like, broadly speaking, a la Ligon, Thomas, and Worrall, and Thomas and Worrall. Okay? There's going to be savings and female labor supply. They're going to be both public and private goods. So the reason I said public goods there, because I come from a world where we often don't have public goods. So what I'm trying to say there is we're adding public goods to the problem. We're going to have a detailed budget constraint allowing for welfare programs and taxation. And we're going to have dynamics induced by the time limits of welfare. So let me just quickly place it in the literature. I mean, I'm not being very careful here, but I guess key papers are.
Is there any paper that is not from England?
Are you asking about the literature, or are you asking about my slides? I guess I forgot a Rios rule reference. We start with Chicago, I guess, although that was Paris at that time, so that doesn't count as England yet. So Chiapori, obviously, 98, 92. And I guess our empirical papers and papers with public goods. And then there's, of course, the Thomas and Worrall, and Ligon, Thomas and Worrall. Ethan is in the US. And the Mazzocco papers on collective models of labor supply. And, of course, importantly, the paper by Alessandra, yours, mine, and ours, on divorce. That's an important element in this model. And beyond that, there are kind of dynamic models of consumption and labor supply with idiosyncratic risk and welfare programs. So, how does the model work? As an outline, there are going to be singles and there are going to be couples. It's going to be a marriage market with frictions. So basically, you hang around there and you get offers which you accept or you reject. There's going to be imperfectly transferable utility. Okay, so and allocation of resources are based on Pareto optimal allocations given time varying weights. Divorce. So basically, implicitly, there's going to be a participation constraint for the couple, and divorce is going to take place when the participation constraint cannot possibly be satisfied. So that's the renegotiation bit of the model, which I will explain later. Women are going to decide whether to work or not. There's going to be household consumption decisions and savings. But unfortunately, up to now, we have exogenous fertility. Now, I don't think this is an absolutely major issue for US data, because fertility is relatively low, and I think quite not that sensitive. But we might go there if we find it's feasible numerically. So now I'm going to describe so basically, as this is not a complete paper, I'm not sure I will even take up all the time. But what I'll do is I'll describe the model as we've set it up. Then I'll show you the different results, and then I'm going to show you some really tentative simulations of not the full model and not with estimated parameters, but just to give you an idea of how it works. So first of all, we start with
sorry.
Yes.
The introduction of the reform is unanticipated. I mean, there is no behavioral.
I mean, that's a really good question. So if you look at the data, you start seeing a little bit of movement just before. It's not clear if this is a violation of diff assumption or if it's real anticipation. I don't know. But there's a really open question as to how we go about estimating this model. And one is kind of what I like most, and also Alessandra used in her paper. You kind of look at the reform, you characterize a moment describing the reform. That's what I call different diffs here, and then you get the model to fit that. That's what we did in our Progressa paper and so on. The other is the kind of Todd and Wolpin approach, where you estimate it in the control group and then you simulate what's going to happen. I'm not completely sure what the politics at the time were. Obviously, there was a lot of noise about welfare reform, but I'm not sure the details were really known.
But people do anticipate the ending of the welfare.
So, there are two types of people in this world: those who live in the pre-Clinton era, who just live with the AFTC, and they certainly do not anticipate any policy reform. There are the people who live in the Clinton era reforms, who then take full into account the fact they've got a limited amount of years in benefits, and actually varies by state, and I'm going to discuss that. I'm going to show you that. But first, the model. So first of all, we have W for woman and S for single. So she's got a flow utility, which depends on consumption, work behavior. She can have kids. You can be single and have kids, and benefits. That's the stigma of participating in the welfare program. Now, in the next period, two things can happen. One, she does not get an offer to marry, and she continues in the single state and solves the same problem. Of course, it's a non-stationary because it's a life cycle problem. Alternatively, she actually does get a marital offer, and at that point, she has to decide whether to marry, in which case she will continue with this value, and of course I will have to describe that, or not marry, in which case she does exactly the same as if she didn't get an offer, and I will have to tell you how M is decided upon, which I will. And she has the completely standard budget constraint, where you've got assets here, you've got assets in the previous period, you've got consumption. You've got this kind of equivalence scale, which is take into account that she may have kids, and she's got earnings, and she's got taxes and transfers and welfare and all that. The single men are boring, as has been pointed out many times in this meeting. They come with stochastic income, this YHT, and all they do is they sit at home eating crisps and playing Xbox or whatever. But they have some value because they have income. When they are single, they don't care about kids, right? So we're doing that because that will make the state space kind of crazy, because you've got these divorced people, you have to remember that they had kids and so on. So we're not doing that. Of course, we know their age. And when they're single again, they can either receive offers to marry or not, and they have to decide whether to marry or not, something we'll discuss in a little bit. And they have a more boring budget constraint because they are not taxed, and we might introduce taxes there, but certainly they don't get welfare when they're single. Okay. So, now, value of marriage. First of all, when you're married, preferences may change. So we're not restricting preferences to be the same in the married and the single state. And the husband, at that point, does derive utility from having kids. So the kids have to be present. And we assume that while married, there's no distinction on the ownership of assets. And we're going to impose equal distribution of assets upon divorce. And of course, that's taken into account in the marital decision. Because by the way, they both have to want to get married. So,
but those are only the assets after marriage or before as well?
I'm sorry?
Those are the assets they...
So when you're married, you accumulate assets in a common pot.
But also before, the accumulated assets are also in the same pot? Is that tax on...
No, before they get married, you have your individual assets, and as soon as you get married, they get all merged into a common account.
So you huge tax on assets when you get
married. But
married.
That's true. That's exactly what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Beware those who are married and considering divorce. In England, at least, or the US. The continuation values of post-marriage affect the total value of marriage because of the efficient allocation of resources. And given a Pareto weight, allocation of resources is efficient, I said that, and the Pareto weights will evolve. So what's the value of marriage? I don't want Victor's question. This is a well-defined value, right? It's a well-defined optimization problem, and then each person gets their own value according to the Pareto weights. And that is, so here we have the thetas are the current period Pareto weights. There's the woman's and the husband's. And you've got, the woman has her flow utility, exactly as before. The husband has his flow utility, which now depends on the presence or otherwise of kids. And there is love, kind of match-specific effect. That's going to evolve over time. Okay? So there are going to be two reasons why you might want to divorce, right? One is because this gets destroyed, or goes down, or you might want to get married because basically you've got a lot of good luck in the labor market relative to your spouse, and you want to be alone. And so the next period, what can happen in the next period? In the next period, you can either not divorce, in which case we continue with the same life cycle type problem, or you can divorce. And it's kind of quite interesting, of course, that well, it's obvious but still interesting that the values in the future single life are going to affect the optimization problem now in the allocation of resources and so on.
Why do you say it's efficient?
Why? Because exactly because you're maximizing this.
No, that doesn't make it efficient. For efficiency, you would need not to face the threat that when you get divorced, 50% of your savings are going to go to your spouse.
Well, it's efficient subject to that.
Okay, fine.
Yes, yes.
Because otherwise, you would like to be able to make.
Absolutely. So no, it's efficient within that institutional framework. So, because otherwise you internalize everything. So in that sense, it's efficient.
So this is what Masopo did, isn't it?
I'm sorry?
This is what Masopo's dissertation mechanism said.
Exactly.
So then, there's a question. This doesn't need any triggers.
Sorry?
This doesn't need any trigger strategy.
I can't hear.
This doesn't need any trigger strategy. So how do you enforce in the last period to honor any Pareto way? Where's that?
Exactly. That's a very interesting question, actually. The reason you got enforceability here which you wouldn't have, say, in a Thomas and Worrall world or whatever, is because marriage has value in itself. So in Thomas and Worrall, I'm making a transfer to my unlucky partner in a kind of partial insurance contract in anticipation of some kind of future transfer. And if that future is not there, of course, that's all going to unravel. But here, I value the presence of my spouse now as well, so I don't want them to walk out. And this is coming, of course, both from this, which will be lost if we split up, and it's coming from the economy of scale here, where you can see that how the husband's and the or his and hers consumption, what they imply about the total expenditure of the.
That's exactly right. Where gains from. I mean, there's an implicit gain which we're saying that we respect the inherited parental weights of the great, and that is what.
No, we're going to now redefine the parental weights and how they evolve.
Imagine in the last year has no future. There is some gain.
Yes, because.
You're choosing to respect the parental.
But you're taking that into account in the recursive problem because you do not want this breakup to take place, even in the last period.
Because what I'm saying is that there is an implicit assumption.
Okay.
The same in the last period, the parental weights that you bring cannot be argued upon. It's either lack or you bring. That's all I'm saying.
So what if the participation constraint doesn't bind? Why is that
Yeah.
an issue?
Because it's a mixed chart prediction about what happens.
But there isn't a sharp prediction when there's a band of inaction.
Yes,
right?
exactly. That's how I've understood the problem. So just so that's very important, of course, right? So why do you want to get married? You want to get married because of mutual attraction. That's the match-specific effect, and you want to get married because there are economies of scale. By the way, your preferences are also different. Okay, so you might enjoy life more as a married person, or less, whatever. Okay, so decision to marry. In order for marriage to take place, both people have to agree. So the value that the woman is going to get when married has to be greater than the value she'll get when single. And the value that he has to get, it has to be greater than when he is single. Okay? VWM is the realized welfare. Okay, we said that. So when they meet, you see, that's the kind of difference with the frictionless world. In the frictionless world, effectively, with continuous types, basically the surplus has kind of gone to zero, right? Because your outside option is the next worst partner. But here, because there are these search frictions, there is kind of positive surplus to be split up. So we arbitrarily assume it's a kind of a symmetric Nash. So we split it up. We define the Pareto weight so at the point of marriage, the surplus that the woman gets and the man gets are equalized. Now that's ad hoc, but I don't think we have a particularly better way of doing it. So of course, under full commitment, the Pareto weights do not change, and allocations may violate an exposed participation constraint. Divorce will only take place in situations where it was ex ante efficient to divorce, which they can exist. If a marriage enters a situation where it kind of destroys value, it's better to make people split up. But that's only the case when you have divorce with full commitment. But with limited commitment, the participation constraint needs to be satisfied in every period, right? So you're going to have inefficient divorce, ex ante inefficient divorces. And in this case, allocations and hence the sharing rule need to be to change in response to outside options. So this is the rule, basically. So basically, we have Nicola in the audience, so I can use these terms. It's a kind of a recursive saddle point problem. Yeah.
Because I don't understand why you say inefficient divorce. There are no transfer possible?
Yes.
So why is inefficient?
So why what?
Why you get inefficient divorce?
Well, because I guess because
I
of this.
understand that the split of...
I understand your question.
Bargaining power.
I understand your question. So, this is the Pareto frontier, right? if you had full commitment
Well,
and you ended up here, you would still remain married. Here you break up. If you're not within this, you break up.
Yeah, but it's not really inefficient.
It's not
ex post
it's
efficient.
cost
Yes.
efficient.
It's not efficient from an ex ante point of view.
But it's ex post efficient.
But it's ex post efficient.
Yeah, ex post it is efficient, of course. I thought I said that. So what we do is we update. So basically this is the Lagrange multiplier and the participation constraint. Right? So we update the Pareto weight, the minimum that we need to update it to just get the participation constraint to operate. That's exactly like in Alessandra's paper. Okay, so, and of course you can see why this is interesting, right? Because then you introduce a policy and it will shift the participation constraints. So it will then change the allocations within households. And that's one of the things we're interested in.
Just the logic of these constraints. So here the constraints keep going up, right? And I guess one could have thought that some of them stays constant. So why is this the one that's right, not the other?
I'm not sure I understand.
So here
They're not going to be both biting. One of them is going to bite, the other one's not. So basically, you know, if she wants to walk out, she will have to. He will have to transfer more to her relative to the case where the Pareto weights were remaining the same. So she'll have to give him more bargaining power.
no, I understand. So within the period, it doesn't make a difference, right? I mean, it's just a question of the relative bargaining power. No, I'm thinking about over time.
Yes.
Let's say I'm here today, and then tomorrow, either his constraint or her constraint is binding.
Yes.
And in this case, the multiplier goes up. But this means that then the total utility for marriage tomorrow is higher than today, because now the sum of the multipliers is larger than before.
Yes. So all that's taken into account when you calculate the weights. And that's why you're doing it on the basis of the whole value. Right. Let me see if I.
Maybe you want to describe the relative
I
weight.
don't have the expression. So that's all in there.
You're talking about something else. There's only one binding. So it's always, if she gets lucky, no matter how lucky he got in the past, it's all forgotten. It's only chance to keep her around. So it's not like two multipliers about it. You're bouncing until the last one wanted to do it.
No, I understand what's happening, but I just couldn't understand, why it is. I mean, this might be the right one, but you could either do this by keeping one multiplier constant, raising the other one, or by keeping the sum constant, that's doing a change in the relative weight.
Yeah, relative.
But effectively, the relative weight is changing. Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise you increase the utility just by the time. I agree. Yeah,
Huh?
you need the sum to be constant.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
but
you
that's
just
not what you do here, right?
maybe there is a normalization.
The only thing that matters in the end are the relative weights.
No, but over time it matters. But if the total weight is different from today to tomorrow, then that distorts by the temporal decision.
I think Matthias' point is, if you normalize the Pareto weight to adapt to one at each period,
Yes.
Yeah,
that's fine.
then you're right.
Yes.
Exactly.
If you don't do that,
Then we're changing intertemporal allocations. I understand.
the total Pareto weight is much larger, which means that you're overweighting the future.
Yeah. So I have to think of that. So I don't have an answer to
So
that.
the state variable is only the relative weight.
No, but here
No, it's both weights. So I have to, that I understand the point now. I have to think about it.
It's a question I saw this paper too. So that also keeps going up, and I thought it should be normalized. So yeah, right. But I mean, maybe it's optimal to put more resources into the future.
No, but I think that's an interesting question. But I don't have an answer at the moment. I have to. Hmm?
You didn't want to put more weight on the future.
No, I didn't think about it like that. So yeah. So that's a good point. We have to think of that. So. Sorry? Who's more clever? Many people, but who in particular? Yes, yeah, exactly. Yes. Okay, so so divorce. Basically, there is you can think of this total value of marriage as depending on the Pareto weight. I don't know why there's a star. Ignore the star. This is theta. So if you cannot find a Pareto weight such that this thing here is positive, or if you like, take into account some cost of divorce, then the couple dissolves. And upon divorce, we assume that assets are separated according to the prevailing law, which in our model at the moment is just 50-50. The budget constraint. So the model will take into account the detailed budget constraint, and this will include taxes, EITC. I didn't type it up since well, I got the question, and the AFDC TANF. At the moment, we only have AFDC TANF in these simulations, but we've not quite estimated the models. You say, why I'm presenting such a preliminary paper? Because I thought this was, if I'm going to get comments from somewhere, it'll be here. So, and of course, we would like the welfare programs to interact. Yeah, fine.
To end the comment, isn't divorce a very expensive process?
Well,
Why did you choose the model that is considered free? No assets are destroyed, no lawyers.
so we have the C. We do.
And that's independent of the characteristics of the house.
I mean, at the moment, we haven't. Perhaps we might. I don't know if we want to give it more life than just a fixed cost or not. But yeah, I mean but we haven't gone there yet. Yeah.
But there is this issue, right? If you have to redistribute after divorce, it might be more costly.
Yes. No. Yeah. He could depend on assets in some sense.
And what is it? Is it just a fixed cost? It's going to go
All the poor.
every way relatively big to person.
Sorry.
It's going to go. If it's just a fixed cost,
Yeah.
it's going to go the wrong way.
Yes, because you're going to get the poor divorcing less than the rich, I guess, or you have to make something
very
else.
expensive then.
Yes. No, that's a good point. We should consider that. So, of course, there's uncertainty in this model, plenty of it. So the husband's income is just an earnings process. There's kind of a life cycle profile. And by the way, when you draw a husband, this person is characterized by two things, right? They're characterized by actually three things, but we get rid of one. By assets, the current state of their income, because of the persistence of the income shocks, and age. But in order to simplify our life, we've imposed in the model that a woman only marries a man just 2 years older than her. So if you know the woman's age, you know the man's age. That's just to keep the state space under control, sort of. Okay, so we have an income process that's basically measurement error. That's a shock that follows an AR1, close to random walk, basically. That's going to be a time dummy and a fixed effect. Okay.
And that is measurement error.
This measurement error. So we're going to filter it out. So we're not going to have any transitory shocks. We're going to convolute the transitory shocks with measurement error and just get rid of it.
Costas, the time effects, it's not clear you want to dummy those out, in a sense. I think one of the big concerns is with the last recession, you're getting all these women running up against their time limits. So you might want to think about somehow allowing a cycle or probability of very bad states for a number of periods to account. Otherwise, you estimated in the 90s when the economy was doing quite well, you might get, your predictions about how many people are going to hit the time limits and how they're going on.
So
might be
I
very
guess
different from if you estimated it the last 5 years.
Yeah, I wonder if another way of doing that would be to have an exogenous job destruction rate, something like that, and play around with that. Because, obviously if you've got real macro shocks there, there are all sorts of problems, right? Because it's an incomplete markets economy. So, okay, now the woman has the same looking process, except that this is the wage, right? Because she has to decide whether to work or not. So that's kind of her earnings when she works. And of course, they choose their work effort.
So sorry.
Yes.
Also in the case of women, wages are exogenous?
Wages.
I mean,
Not income.
no doubly.
It's exogenous in the sense that, well, I mean, So we haven't quite yet introduced
an
unobserved. So we're not going to have experience, right? So we're going to have an exogenous age profile. You may validly ask if this initial condition here is correlated to her preference, and we'll probably do that. Haven't done that yet. So individuals meet each other at a constant rate, lambda for J for woman and wife and husband. Women draw men from an offer distribution. Now here's a difficult bit that I think Raquel also talked a bit about. This is the distribution of men, right? The distribution of a man for a woman of age A, okay, with assets capital A and state of income Y. Now that's kind of an endogenous object, right? Because obviously if more marriages take place now, there will be less men in the next period. Now, in terms of estimation, we're going to take this to be the empirical distribution. And at some point, we'll think as to whether we're going to update that in the simulation. That, of course, requires you to iterate all the economy to resolve for this endogenous distribution. But for estimation, it doesn't bother us too much because we just take it as it is in the data. Okay, so that's fertility. Basically, what we will have is children arrive according to a stochastic process that depends on the age of the woman and whether she's married or not, and whether she has other children. And we're going to restrict it to maximum of 2 kids, because again you have to carry all these state variables. Of course, kids are crucial here because they determine eligibility for benefits, so we can't get rid of them. But whether we want to choose them or not, that's a different kettle of fish.
So you can track of the age of the kids?
Yes, absolutely.
Isn't that better to keep track of your age stochastic?
Sorry?
Isn't it better to allow for more children that know less things about them, whether they are...
No, we need the age because
no, but the same 3 ages, and the 6 to 12, 12 to 18, or 12 to 20, and the age stochastic.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't see how this will work because you've got this very fine time limits. I mean, we could kind of, but we're trying to match it as realistically as possible. And yeah, I think what we're doing is better. So, the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act, August 1996. The act became effective in July 97. So you've got this period here. Here you can have effects, right? Because you're being told that from next year there's going to be a limit. So, but now it doesn't count. So you might want to actually take into account as much welfare as possible now. Many states now the point about this reform is it's quite complicated. So what you have is the federal government telling the states, we are going to pay you for so many months of welfare per person. You then go and do whatever you like with your own money beyond that. And different states, depending on their, politics and socioeconomic status, did different things. So many states started imposing these limits already in 1996 and 97, but some in 98 and 99. Of course, funding from their own taxes. Okay, so, and of course the stated goals was to incentivize people to move to work from welfare and to encourage marriage instead of single parenthood. These were the stated policy goals. Some of them anyway. So the main element was to impose time limits. Pre-reform AFTC, eligible if youngest child was under 18. Post-reform, maximum eligibility based on federal funding, 5 years. So you cannot have welfare for more than 5 years. Right? So states could impose their own rules. So this is a description.
Sorry, so you're talking about encouraging marriage. Wouldn't an important factor be the eligibility, say, of unmarried versus married families?
So there's no rule that says that a married person cannot get a TANF, but it's assessed on total household income. So there's effectively it's doing So FDC, in some sense, was a very strong disincentive to marry, right? Because you pool the incomes, but it's not because you were married; it's because you were, quote, richer.
Oh, I thought so. TAMF is like that, right? But I thought the FTC was explicitly disallowing marriage.
Okay, so yes, maybe, and if that's the
I mean, if you're concerned about the marriage effects, this might be one of the more
yes,
important
absolutely. So we've modeled it exactly as it was.
Okay.
Yes. So here's a description. So this is pre-reform. You've got a child age 0. You have potential eligibility up to 18 years. And now, after the reform, Michigan stays where it is, keeps the original generosity, just pays for itself.
It's pre-reform, all states.
Pre-reform, all states. It was a federal program. Okay, Illinois, basically capped at 5 years, and of course you get the decline here because if your child is 16, you only have 2 years till the child becomes 18. Right? Ohio, lower. They can do that with the new system. Massachusetts, more complicated. Okay, so that's the variation that we're going to exploit now in the different diffs design. So we're going to use the survey of income and program participation. It's a rolling panel. It's got detailed information on program participation, and the key outcomes that we're going to look at are going to be whether you claim benefits, how much you work, marriage and divorce, and indeed assets as well. And now the SIP is a rolling panel. It's got these kind of seam effects and recall problems. So what we're doing, we're just taking the information from the period just preceding the current interview, the quarter preceding the current interview, not the entire past that the person records. So we're going to do difference in differences. We're going to only keep low education individuals, because they are the ones who are really on welfare, if they ever are. We're going to do comparison both within states across demographic groups, so eligible, ineligible, and across states. And we're going to have state-specific time trends, right? We're not going to have demographic-specific time trends. The data wouldn't take that. And we're going to introduce a bunch of controls, like race, age, disability status, and so on. And what you do get is 4 percentage point increase in employment, 5 percentage points decline in welfare participation, and assets increase by about 4,000. Okay, so there are important effects there. So let's look at it now a bit over time. So the red line obviously is the reform period. That's the pre-reform period over which we have data. You can see that very fast decline in welfare. Of course, this explains why different diffs can be problematic. These are very different people than these people here.
These are number of recipients?
Yes, proportion, change, proportion, the effect. It's the effect, the different diff effect, but done at different points in time.
On participation in programs.
Yes, yes. Okay, so you see this this decline, and you can see also male employment goes up as well, although it's not modeled here in the right. So that's.
Costas, what explained the big decline before the introduction? You know?
Big decline. Well, you don't have such a big decline. I mean, it's not significant. It's within. These are confidence intervals, right?
I see. Sorry.
And female employment goes up quite a lot.
For this is female consent
Sorry?
for these groups. Is it female employment for these groups who receive benefits?
So this is an effect, right? So this is an impact. So it's usually as a control group. both ineligible people
Oh, I can.
and compares across states. So it's kind of a triple diff. It's not different diff, it's different diff kind of thing.
But there's an education cutoff here. This is for the lowest education.
No, it's also for high school, so non-college. And the Holy Grail, it does have an effect on divorce, and it doesn't have an effect on marriage. It reduces divorce. These are the two effects. The two,
How do you define it? There's a different with all these states doing slightly different things. It's not like you just have one treatment or not treatment.
Yeah.
What are you calling?
So
the
basically,
effect of what?
if you've imposed time limits, we put you in the treatment group.
Okay.
If you don't have time limits, so of course the structural model will take this
Yeah.
detail into account. But
So it's more than just Michigan that didn't impose time limits? It's a
Yes,
lot? Okay,
yes.
So there's a bunch that do it.
Yes.
Bunch that, okay.
So Michigan stays in the control group.
Got you.
Okay, so there are effects here. You can see, but not on marriage. At least we don't see them in the data. Of course, these are short run, and we don't know if we get them in the structural model. Actually, with the parameters that we've just dreamt up from our head, we're getting no effects either on divorce or marriage. But we're not worried about that because we're not estimating on the data. So I'll just to finish off. I'm not sure how much time I have or don't have, but oh, perfect. So I'm going to show you some simulations. As I said, this preliminary stuff. At the moment, we only have one child arriving at the deterministic point, so we don't have the stochastic process there. We're not pulling men and women from the empirical distribution. So we're not doing most of the stuff but we are solving for this complex problem. We are resolving for the Pareto weights. We're doing all that kind of stuff quite nicely. So we have McClement's equivalence scales. There's another English academic there, McClement's. Okay, a single spends 61% of what a childless couple spends, etc., etc. We don't have to. So this is what these are simulations. So these are two steady states, no limits and limits, right? So we have an increase in a rather large increase in labor supply given our dreamt up parameters, a very large decline in participation, an increase in asset holdings, okay, but we get no effect on marriage and divorce.
Can you tell us what happens in terms of within the couple?
Yes. So, the problem is that this is an aging cohort. So, basically we've got all these women at the point of the reform. They've got different ages. Some are 20, some are 40. And the reform is going to affect them differently. And then as we go across time, they are aging. So these kind of effects that you're seeing are not genuine transitional dynamics. They are mixed up with with the fact that the cohort is aging. So you've got this initial increase in female participation, then it starts declining. Welfare dips down a lot. Of course, this dip here is partly because this child is aging, so they're not going to be eligible with that as well, anyway. And this is the Pareto weight. So basically, it seems to be shifting the weight in favor of the husband, at least initially.
This is the additional. No, this is not. They are not taking 0.02. This is
No, the effect. This is like a fake different. These graphs are different diffs from simulated data. Okay, so that's So you do get a shift of consumption.
So let me see this unfair. The abolition of welfare typifies the women. Right?
Sorry, the abolition of welfare.
Makes men allow men to make their wives work harder.
Yeah.
Is that what's going on?
Yes. Yes, because their outside option has worsened a lot. They cannot stay unmarried and live for a long period on welfare.
But even within the marriage couple.
But that's why. But that determines what you're going to get in the marriage, because your outside option has gone down. That's right.
As the woman continues to work, turns out she's doing pretty good in the labor market, and the guy's bargaining power goes down. That's what we see on the right here.
That's what
concluding remarks. I've decided I don't particularly like concluding remarks, but it's customary, so I'll just leave it up there. Thank you.
Two quick comments, and again, you have information about tonight's dinner in the folders. At the end.